So for anybody that has been living under a rock all day, we did in fact fire Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh has been our head coach for 3.5 years now. His record, I think, is like 20-36, which, if you're wondering, is real bad. There's reports out there. I'm going to talk. First off, I'm going to report exactly what happened. Robert Saleh was called into Woody Johnson's office, and Woody Johnson fired him. That's all that's 100% been confirmed. There are unconfirmed reports. The first one being that he was going to fire Nathaniel Hackett, who was our offensive coordinator, that day. Supposedly, what has been reported out was that he was not, in fact, going to fire him, but he was going to demote him, take away his play calling responsibilities. Okay, so those are two conflicting reports, but I tend to believe the second one. Yeah. That he wasn't going to fire him, but he was going to relieve him of his play calling responsibilities. Okay, that's one. The second one being that he was escorted by security out of the facility. Again, I've heard that's been reported by named reporters. That's again the first report, unnamed reports. Second report, named reports. I tend to believe the named reports over the unnamed reports. The second one being he was escorted by security. The named reports said he was not, in fact, escorted by security and dragged out, kicking and screaming, but he was escorted to his car, which is standard operating procedure for the head coach anyway. All right. So, how am I feeling emotionally? I'm fine, bro. Like, I got bigger problems in life. Robert Saleh was not. I got 99 problems, and Robert Saleh was not one. So, I feel perfectly fine. How do I feel as a New York Jets fan? Specifically, how's my fandom doing? I didn't like Robert Saleh as head coach. I had gotten to the point where I don't think he's very good. Rather, I don't think he was operating at his best for the past 3 years. And I'll say that to mean that you find, and you've seen this before, that if a defensive head coach tends to have limited success with his offense, rather than attempt to be more aggressive, score more points, take more chances, take more risks, they tend to get more conservative. They tend to demand more control. These offensive guys, they're kind of weird. So I need to understand what they're doing, because what they're doing is messing up my defense winning us football games. It's this mentality that I've seen repeated multiple times over the course of my Jets fandom. The first time I remember seeing it very, very clearly was under Eric Mangini. Eric Mangini took over. He was the man genius. He came from New England. The New York Jets offense struggled, especially his first year, because they had like Kellen Clemens was the quarterback for most of the time. And then they got Brett Favre. Brett Favre got hurt. And then he tried to wrestle more and more of the responsibilities of the offense. And obviously he was a defensive head coach from the offensive coordinators. And then, they fired him, brought in Rex Ryan. Now, Rex Ryan inherited a championship level team and took them to the playoffs. Never had great regular season success, and I don't think that people recognize just how bad of a regular season coach he was. He's very inconsistent. His teams, he would operate on a sugar high. So, like, he'd get the team all rah-rahed up. They'd play their ass off for a week, and then the next week, they'd lose again. And then he'd get them fired up again, and then they'd lose again, and then he'd fire them up. It was really just he through his entire career, I think he only had one or two streaks of more than 2 wins in a row, which is strange. But then you'd play the Patriots, you'd get them all riled up. It would confuse the holy crap out of Tom Brady. They'd win a game that they shouldn't win. They went on that one playoff run where they got to the AFC Championship twice. Once because Cincinnati decided to bench their entire starting unit in Week 17, only to play the Jets again in the first week of the playoffs. The Jets went on a run. We went to the AFC Championship game twice. Okay, cool. Once the success started to wear off, the team got a little bit older. His drafting philosophy of just like meme drafting fullbacks stopped working. You saw him start to grip tighter and tighter onto the reins of an offense, trying to make them more consistent. So the first time I remember seeing that was when he hired Tony Sparano, and Tony Sparano ran the Wildcat. They also signed Michael Vick and Tim Tebow the same offseason. Interesting year. This attempt at just a power running game and just establish the run and just score enough so that my defense can win us games was the first time I remember very clearly watching a defensive head coach try to take responsibilities over the offense. Okay, fine. They fire him. They bring in Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles' most successful offensive coordinator was Jeremy Bates, and Jeremy Bates threw the ball more than Todd Bowles wanted him to throw the football. It was the most successful that team had ever been, and Todd Bowles fired him. He wanted an offense that could do the thing that he wanted to do. And it reminded me, interestingly, about the last year of Rex Ryan's career, his tenure with the New York Jets. He had an offensive coordinator named Marty Mornhinweg. Marty Mornhinweg was a West Coast guy way back to the Packers and to the 49ers. Like he coached with Andy Reid back when Andy Reid was in Green Bay. He coached with anyway, Marty Mornhinweg, old school West Coast head coach. The offense didn't look much different under Marty Mornhinweg than it did under Tony Sparano until the very last game of the year. Geno Smith throws for like 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, had a perfect quarterback rating. Came out on Twitter later on that day that Rex Ryan was forced. Marty Mornhinweg made Rex Ryan sign a letter saying that he would not interfere with the game plan for that week, and that Marty Mornhinweg would call whatever he wanted. And that was the most successful game that Geno Smith had that season and to this point in his entire career.
That's not a good sign.
That was a huge red flag to me, because that red flag told me that if Marty Mornhinweg wasn't allowed to call what he wanted, and this defensive guy was the guy that was definitely in charge of why the team had been so unsuccessful over the course of the season, that there was a huge problem. Todd Bowles comes in, and Todd Bowles does basically the exact same thing. After he has Jeremy Bates has the most successful season that he had for the New York Jets. I think they were 10-6. They didn't make the playoffs that year. He fires Jeremy Bates, and he brings in just a series of random offensive guys. Todd Bowles' career ends. They bring in their first offensive coach in a while, Adam Gase. But at that point, the talent was about as low as it could possibly get. And we know that Adam Gase might not actually be very good. I think we figured that out to this point. He's probably not very good. Personally, I think maybe he could succeed in the NFL if he had a little bit more talent, but I'll put it on maybe he's just not very good.
More focus on coaching, less focus on googly eyes during press conferences.
That was the biggest thing. I think the media turned on him so fast. I think the googly eye thing was bad. I think he had so little talent. I think that they drafted really poorly for most of his career until he's the reason we got Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas was a personal friend of his from Chicago, from their time when they worked together in Chicago. I have him to thank for Joe Douglas, and I do think Joe Douglas is a very good general manager, at least for acquiring the talent necessary for a head coach to be successful. So they bring in Robert Saleh. They couldn't possibly keep Adam Gase. He had worn through the fan base. They didn't want him anymore. That's fine. I'll live with it. They bring in Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh immediately hires his best friend's little brother. Now, keep in mind, Matt LaFleur, who's the head coach now at Green Bay. Matt LaFleur, his best man at his wedding was Robert Saleh. They've been friends going back to Eastern Michigan, where they were both graduate assistant coaches. They both coached under Mike Shanahan. Like, these guys were buddies going all the way back. His first head coaching job, he hires Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur's little brother, to be his offensive coordinator. The offense struggles because I don't know if he immediately he was like overwhelmed, but like the New York media chews people up, and you see this in the Boston media.
Yeah.
If you aren't prepared for the snark of this particular brand of journalism, you only get it in New York. You only get it in Philadelphia. You only get it in Boston. Those are really the only 3 places in the United States where you're gonna get scrutiny from guys that are trying to get clickbait, man. They are trying to set you on fire every time you get out there. First press conference.
And that's why Bill's responses, Bill Belichick's responses are always nope, nothing, not going to tell you anything.
But do you know why he did that? He was a coach, the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants.
Yeah.
Forever. And he was a coach underneath Bill Parcells for the New York Jets for a while.
Yeah.
But he knew the garbage he was walking into. And Bill Belichick was a second-time head coach for the New England Patriots.
Experience pays.
Yeah. He went through that crap. He went through a losing team in Cleveland. Smaller market, but still. But he was seasoned. He knew what he was walking into. He knew Boston was going to be crap. He watched Bill Parcells do it. He did his own press conferences in New York. As the defensive coordinator of the New York Giants, as the defensive coordinator of the New York Jets. He did his rounds. So Robert Saleh walks in and almost the first off, they traded Sam Darnold that offseason. Immediately, they just jettisoned him. Fine. They drafted Zach Wilson. Almost immediately, they asked the question to Robert Saleh, are you going to have a veteran mentor for Zach Wilson? We don't need a veteran mentor. We've got Greg Knapp. This guy's helped develop multiple all-pro quarterbacks. A couple weeks later, Greg Knapp gets hit by a car. Dies. Nappy's gone. Are you going to get a veteran mentor? Joe Flacco's out there. Nope, we're not going to. You're just going to play Zach Wilson immediately. Oh yeah, it's the best way to develop a quarterback. Got to get him out and play. Not at all concerned about the offensive line or the lack of weapons. No, we got this. Okay. His career starts that way. 2.5 years of Zach Wilson is our quarterback. Zach Wilson is going to get benched. We're just trying to get his confidence back. I think Robert Saleh's confidence was destroyed in those first couple of years. I think whatever confidence he had over the last couple of years or so has been absolutely murdered.
Because especially the offense. The offense especially, I think, really, his confidence in the offense was probably just shot. Because then at the same time, you have Zach Wilson, who's, we've seen is not necessarily a very good QB, with not very good support, not very good weapons until you get what's his name?
Garrett Wilson,
yeah.
Paul,
and now it's okay, but in his rookie year and his second year, there really wasn't quite that level. And you're going against Bill Belichick, and I'm having a bad night. What's the name of the Buffalo coach again?
McDermott.
McDermott, yeah. McDermott and Belichick will both run.
Brian Flores at that point too.
Yeah, Flores at that point. Yeah, exactly. Just all of the defenses in the AFC East are just crack squads. You're playing six. And even if the squads aren't very good, the coaches are very good, and they all have good experience taking down rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And so you're just week in 6 games of your 16 at that point games are just terrible.
They're murderers row. They're absolute murderers row. Yeah. We go into Zach Wilson's second year. He gets hurt in preseason. They start Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's 1-3. That offensive line was bad. You see Joe Flacco now. This is 2 years later. Joe Flacco last year led the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs. Yeah. This year, what did he do? 300 plus yards last week?
Yeah, and the Colts.
300 plus yards for the Colts. Just looked fantastic. He's not done. So the way that Robert Saleh's first couple of years went, you could see him trying to clutch tighter and tighter around the offense. Just give me enough offense. Run the ball 3 times and punt it. Just don't throw an interception. Don't ruin my defense. I remember multiple times you see the tweets. I don't know if you're ever on Twitter, and I am a little bit. I try to stay away from politics, stay away from everything on Twitter, but I do have a few accounts that I follow, and one of them is this account that tracks cowardly punts, like the Cowardly Punt Index.
Yeah.
Robert Saleh is up there with Todd Bowles for like the highest percentage of cowardly punt. And a cowardly punt, if I'm going to explain it correctly, is a punt that if you went for it, you're more likely to be successful, even if you don't get the first down than you are if you punt.
You're more likely to win the game based on going for it than you are by punting.
That's correct. So Cowardly Punt Index at the 99 percentile, fairly consistently with Robert Saleh. Okay. That's only a symptom. It's not the disease. In addition to this, you see very consistently the New York Jets being in the top 5 in penalties. Defensive penalties especially. Penalties that are unnecessary. Roughing the passer. Penalties for unnecessary roughness. Late hit against the quarterback. Unnecessary roughness, leading with the helmet in the secondary. A couple of weeks ago, we had something like 10 penalties against Tennessee. We beat them, but it was 10 penalties against Tennessee. We gave up like 110 yards on those.
Bit much.
Last week, it was like 8 penalties for 93 yards. Robert Saleh, over his tenure, New York Jets 20-36, has been penalized 80 times more than his opponents in 50 games.
That's a lot.
80 times more. Okay. So the defense has been great. The offense is consistently, even with Aaron Rodgers, we're looking at an offense that's consistently over the past 3.5 years been 30th or worse in EPA. You're looking at a team that's consistently penalized. A team that has been blown out more than 20 times in his 36 losses. Most of the losses that he's had have been by 2 scores or more. And then this interesting thing, this interesting conversation happens during the London game, 9 o'clock in the morning. If you didn't get up to watch it, I understand. Robert Saleh has been, in the offseason, taking a more hands-on approach from the offense. He's wanted to sit in on quarterback meetings. He wants to know what they're doing. He wants to know how quarterbacks are, how they're game planning. He wants to understand what's going on in the offensive side of the ball. Because of that, he's sitting on meetings. What? Like, it's famous that Bill Belichick used to sit down specifically with Tom Brady and teach him how the defense is playing against him. That's been discussed by Tom Brady, by Bill Belichick. They have separately talked about the fact that they would have meetings. I'm going to help you understand what this defense is trying to do to you. That's not what we're talking about with Robert Saleh. This is Robert Saleh choosing the game plan. And if you're not super familiar with NFL football, when we're talking about a game plan can include something like game scripting. It might be the first 13 plays of the game. A game plan might include the entire game plan for the offense, which might be the selection of plays that they're going to be running over the course of the week, which curates the plays that are in versus the plays that are out, the order that those plays are called in, and the time at which those plays, the time not necessarily being the time of the game, but like the down and distance that that selection is limited to. You can't go into a game with 400 plays. It's not really Madden. You go into a game with maybe 50, 60 plays, something like that, because a lot of those plays get run multiple times and, you have different down situations, whatever. Robert Saleh is going into the offensive meetings and helping dictate what's going to be called. Okay. Now, I understand wanting control, especially because it's pretty well documented he isn't the guy that wanted Nathaniel Hackett. But obviously he's the guy that wanted to have Aaron Rodgers. I understand he's had really good defenses, but let's also be a little bit clear. They've drafted so many defensive players for him and spent so many resources on defensive players, and his defense is so consistently like cover one, cover three, cover one, cover three, cover one, cover three. This is not an imaginative defense. How many times do we blitz a game? No more than 8. Cover one, cover three. Cover one, cover three. This is not an imaginative defense. This is not this guy. This is not Rex Ryan. This is not D'Amico Ryans. This is not Brian Flores. This is cover one, cover three. There's a lot of guys out there that can do that, especially the amount of talent they have. So you begin to ask the question, what is Robert Saleh adding? Because if he's taking away from the offense, he's not bringing anything to the defense necessary. He must be motivating the team. Every year, this guy's losing the team. Like, what do we lose? This guy's kind of whiny. So they get a lot of false starts. 2 weeks ago, what does he gets a question on the cadence? What does he say? Maybe we have to look into changing the cadence. They interview Aaron Rodgers literally like 20 minutes later. Aaron Rodgers like, we had 5 false starts or whatever, but like we had 1 coming into the game. This is what I've been doing for my entire career, 21 years. You're telling me we have to change it now? Robert Saleh comes out the next day. No, we're not going to look into the cadence changing. So who's right?
That's a baffling lack of media literacy, I think.
Just going into his 4th year. He's 4th-year head coach.
You know, if the media says like, "Hey, are you going to do this thing?" and you don't know for certain, you say, "No." This is
we're going to stick to what works. We know that this works over the course of the season.
Or at worst, you say, "I'll defer to Nathaniel on that because that's his area of expertise."
Absolutely, but like, no, we'll look into it because everything's we got to make sure that we lock down everything. Are you going to look into like the 2 defensive late hits by Chuck Clark? You're going to look into the PDIs, the holdings on Sauce and DJ Reed? Are we going to look into those, or is it just the cadence by Aaron Rodgers?
The defense is fine. But this offense we got to look at.
Yeah. I don't know, man. So how do I feel? I'm expecting. I said it on our last show. I expected we were going to lose to the Vikings. What I'll say about our loss to the Vikings is that we scored 20 points in the second half. That's a good defense. We scored 20 points on in the second half. Could we get anything going in the first half? No. We scored 20 points in the second half. That offense started to look a little bit like it's coming alive. This Bills team is not nearly as good as that Vikings team. If we can carry some degree of momentum, at least on offense, I think we'll be fine. Do I think we're going to lose anything on defense? No. Because Jeff Ulbrich was the defensive coordinator. He's the guy that's calling the plays anyway. Yeah. Do I think he's going to be the CEO head coach? No. I think there's a split situation now. I think Robert Saleh was fired for fucking with Nathaniel Hackett.
Aaron probably called up Woody Johnson and said, "Hey, man, the coach, he got to go." Like I have to imagine that happen. I don't see how Robert Saleh gets fired if Aaron is not calling the owner and saying, like, you gotta can this guy. He's a detriment.
Yeah, that's gotta be what I'm thinking too. And Woody Johnson, I know that Woody Johnson, I know that he's the emperor with no clothes. I know it. I don't know it for a fact, but it's one of those things that I know. I know he's that rich guy that wants to think he's involved that isn't really involved. I know that he hired Adam Gates because Peyton Manning called him and told him he's a genius. Not because he knows that he's a genius, but because Peyton Manning said so. If he had a meeting with Aaron Rodgers after that London game and he was watching the broadcast, which he probably was because he was probably in London at that game, and he probably hears in that broadcast that Robert Saleh is going into the offensive meetings and talking and asking questions and trying to push along his agenda. And then he talks to Aaron Rodgers about it, and Aaron Rodgers says, yes, this is exactly what's happening. And then Robert Saleh has a meeting with Woody Johnson and tells Woody Johnson, yeah, no, I want to demote Hackett. He's not calling the plays that I want. I could see Woody Johnson firing him. Now, it's interesting because it's said that the reports are Joe Douglas didn't know that he was going to get fired. True or not, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers says he didn't know he was going to get fired. True or not, I don't know. But whatever happened in that meeting, I am positive that Woody Johnson is not at all. He's not gonna have trouble sleeping tonight about that. Whatever Robert Saleh said convinced him in that meeting to fire him.
That's even though with Woody Johnson being the way he is, that's still like the first midseason firing, right?
That he's ever had. And this guy's been the owner of this team this isn't David Tepper where he fires a guy every 25 minutes. This is Woody Johnson has never fired anybody midseason. He let Adam Gase go the whole way. He let Todd Bowles go the whole way. He let I guess those are our worst head coaches, probably. Rex Ryan. He let Rex Ryan go like 2 years longer than he needed to. Like, this is a patient owner. Whatever Robert Saleh said, whatever he found out about what Robert Saleh was doing in the meetings, Woody Johnson has no compunction about firing.
Just on the spot, he was like, "No, you're done. This is it." It was the like, I've reached the end of my rope. Get out of the building.
I'm convinced it's going to be a split situation where like Hackett's going to run the offense the way that Aaron Rodgers wants to run the offense, and Ulbrich is only going to be the head coach of the defense. And I'm kind of like, that's what you want, maybe. I don't know. The team, like I said, they scored 20 points in the second half. Okay. Does that mean we carry momentum into this next game against the Bills? And this Bills game is very important. I think it does. I think this Bills team is struggling right now. 2 games in a row, Josh Allen's under 200 yards. Like 130 passing yards. And he was concussed. I don't care what anybody says. I know that he's not on the concussion protocol, and I know they didn't list him, but like they can't list him, right? Because the dude got an in-game concussion, and he's not listed in the game for having a concussion. They're not going to on Monday list him in the concussion protocol.
Yeah, you can't go after the game and list him, because then you're going to have to acknowledge that you violated concussion protocol during the game, and they're going to take a draft pick for that. They're going to be like, you're getting a 5th round pick revoked, at least.
Yeah. So like, he's potentially going to this game with like post-concussive symptoms.
We'll see if they make up like an injury, like elbow soreness, and try to keep him out for a game. Like, I don't know.
He's going to get hit. Every time he plays the Jets, Quincy Williams lays him out once or twice. Quinnen Williams might get on top of him once or twice. Will McDonald, he probably weighs less than Josh Allen, and he doesn't tackle very hard, so maybe that's not going to be a thing. But like, if he gets blitzed and hit hard by a safety, by a linebacker, if he gets real hit by Solly Thomas, this could get ugly. Like, I don't think he completed a pass, or if he did, he completed 1 pass after he came out from the concussion. He was at like 9 for 18, and he finished like 10 for 30 or something. Like, I think I thought we were going to beat the Bills going into this week. I still feel like we're going to beat the Bills going into this week. I didn't think we were going to beat the Vikings. The game ended up a little bit closer than I thought. I'm very curious to see what happens, but
I mean, maybe it's better than that you're playing the Bills like this week with no Saleh, because maybe you get some momentum behind Ulrich and things start moving again.
You always see that dead cat bounce. They fire the head coach, they bring in the interim, and the team plays harder.